Hi, I'm Rich Schaffer, Babylon Town Supervisor. I want to thank you for joining us for this very important program regarding an issue that's going to be on this November's Election Day ballot, the New York State Environmental Bond Act. And I'm joined by Adrienne Esposito, who is the president of the Citizens Campaign for the Environment, somebody who's a very familiar face to all of us in elected office as well as on Long Island when we're talking about issues concerning our environment. She's been doing it for many years and doing it very well. And Julie Tighe, who is the president of the New York League of Conservation Voters, and that's an organization that's been very active, not just out here on Long Island, but throughout New York State, and one of the strongest advocates pushing the state legislature and the governor to get this bond act on the ballot. An act that has not been on the ballot since the late 90s, and important to get this on the ballot so that we can educate people about what it means for clean air, clean water, and green jobs. And I'm excited to talk about that today. So thanks for joining us.
Great. Thank you so much for having us on.
Appreciate it. Adrienne, what is the Bond Act all about?
Well, actually, as you said, it's the first bond act in 25 years, and we're calling it the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Bond Act. It's Proposition 1 on the ballot, and it's on the back of the ballot. So you have to flip the ballot over in order to vote on it.
So if you're voting for your candidates, make sure you flip it over.
That's right.
A lot of people forget about that.
That's right. We see a lot of reduction in votes for the ballots on the back, and so the message is flip the ballot, vote on Proposition 1. And Julie, why don't you tell us the 4 categories that we have in the Environmental Bond Act this year?
Sure. So the Bond Act is actually $4.2 billion. And as you mentioned, it's the first one we've had since 1996 where we're taking it to the voters who we know really care about the environment. Right? There's a big tranche of money available for water infrastructure that will help us with lead replacement, replacing lead pipes, for water infrastructure, where we're dealing with contamination, for water sewer infrastructure, and of course for replacing septics, which we know is an issue in particular here in Suffolk County. There's funding available for parks and open space, making sure that we're protecting our farms, making sure that we have money for purchasing additional land for protection, as well as making investment in parks, just like the park you have right here at Town Hall. There's funding available for protecting our communities from the impacts associated with flooding and storm surge, which, as we're approaching Superstorm Sandy's, anniversary, I think people are really aware of, as right here in hurricane season, that will allow us to take action to do both things like removing structures that are in places that are going to flood, or to improve the environment, wetlands and things like that, so that the stormwater is better absorbed along those lines.
And we're getting resiliency.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
which
exactly
is extremely important.
It's critically important. On Long Island, clean water, fighting climate change is everybody's concern.
Right.
And let's talk about the town of Babylon. I mean, we remember what it was like after Superstorm Sandy. But not only that, right? Right now we have a thing called sunny day flooding,
Right.
where it's a beautiful day.
The impact of Earl a couple of weeks ago, and all of the areas south of Montauk were flooding in the streets. So it's something that hits close to home.
It actually hits our homes.
Yes.
And it's not going to get better. It's
Right.
actually, I'm sorry to say, it's going to get worse.
Right.
So we need to make our coastlines more resilient. We need to figure out how to be part of the fight on climate change. And we need to be able to do it in a way that is affordable for the public. And the answer to that is the Bond Act.
Right. And I think what's really good about the Bond Act is that you're not laying this all on one particular group of people. It's being spread out across New York State. And I think New York voters have in the past demonstrated how apt they are to want to help their fellow neighbor. And if we could spread the costs of this, when you say billions, spreading it across all of the properties in New York State, people paying for this through the state legislature, the leadership, and then being able to focus on issues that are so close to home, like coastal resiliency, which is something that is near and dear to our heart and something that we've been trying to address, but we're only capable of doing it in small little chunks. And of course, we have residents who say, when are you going to get all this done? We've got a $100 million plan that we did to talk about drainage improvements and road raising and coastal resiliency, that we could never, ever, we would not have the wherewithal to do that in the little town of Babylon. But through New York State, we're grateful for you and acting as the leaders that you are, and you always sounding the alarm, getting us to wake up and say, hey, it's important for you to pay attention to this. That's why this is very critical.
Right.
I think it's important to note that this is not, there's not going to be a tax increase associated with this.
Right.
This is going to be coming from funds that the state appropriates every year.
Through their debt service.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
right.
So this is not going to be something that is going to be, increasing taxes. That's really important for people to know.
Right.
Really what it does, it assures that in the state budget, they will be allocating these funds over several years to these issues. And these really are for Long Island. I mean, we have 3 million people who live on an island, so we need to protect our sole source of drinking water, which is the aquifer. We need to treat our sewage,
Right.
even though there is a sewage treatment plant, the Bergen Point plant here
Locally
in
here,
Babylon, but other areas that are not sewed still impact that water quality
Well, we
in the
have
Great South Bay.
half of our town, which we're now lucky enough to be getting a portion of the town along the Charles River. They're being connected through this new program that Suffolk
Yes.
County is doing, but we still have probably another third to a quarter of the town not connected, contributing to, as you said, pollution that's killing or affecting the nitrogen levels in the bay.
In the Bay. And honestly, that third of the town would be ideal
For this.
as a project that could come under and be funded by the New York State Bond Act.
I will be
to
there
hook
the
them
day
up.
after Election Day with the request. And I think what you mentioned, though, is what's critical also is that there isn't, it's dealing with existing money through debt service. So as debt is retired, this bond act will be funding projects as the state legislature and the governor can move those along through that. George Pataki, Republican governor, advanced the last bond act.
That's right.
So it shows how this is a nonpartisan or a bipartisan approach.
Exactly.
The environment, there isn't any Democrat or Republican way of solving climate change or affecting the issues that need to address
That's
clean
right.
water, clean air. And I think you'll see, and I can't speak for all the supervisors, but I think you'll see all of us in a bipartisan fashion supporting and encouraging our voters to support
We have
this.
seen a great deal of bipartisan support. And I have to tell you, I've done this work a couple of decades.
We won't give the number.
And we won't give the number, it's not important.
That's right.
But what is important is that every Democrat and every Republican I've spoken to wants clean water.
Yes.
So, and we all deserve clean water. It's
right.
not a luxury item, it's a necessity.
Right.
And on Long Island, we have challenges associated with that. So the bad news is that the sewer infrastructure and the quality of our drinking water needs help. The good news is we know how to fix the problems. We just need the funding.
To do it.
This is the funding.
This does it.
We have the technology, we have the knowledge, we have the game plan. Now we need the funding.
I
And this
think-
is going to help us to leverage the federal infrastructure funding that was adopted last year by Congress.
And that's going to be available. Right?
Exactly,
And I was going to
exactly.
say
So that's
that
gonna add to this.
It was smart on the part of Governor Hochul and the state legislative leaders, the speaker and the majority leader from the Senate, to be able to recognize that this was the moment in time to do that with this money becoming available from the federal government. You want to be able to piggyback on that to maximize the impact of what you can get done. And I think a great byproduct of this, about 100,000 jobs are scheduled to be created as a result of all of the work that will be done to help reduce greenhouse emission gases, and putting the infrastructure, the building trades will be very excited
Yes.
about having this available to their men and women who are working out in the field to do these types of projects. And you can see this lasting 10 to 15 years. Since
That's right.
The last act was 96, and they're still just about spending the rest of that money off of that bond act. You've got them now looking at another 15 to 20 years of potential work and advancements that can be made.
That's right. We're really excited that the Bond Act actually requires that those jobs be prevailing wage jobs, so that we know that they're family sustaining jobs, so that they're not just minimum wage jobs. They're really going to help people and to support their families.
And a
which
career.
That's right, exactly. So that's really important. And you're right, we had a study done by AECOM that shows that we're going to generate just about 100,000 jobs and about $8 billion in economic activity. So that's because we're going to draw down those federal dollars, couple that with the state dollars, and a small share at the local level. So that's generally how they work. So we're really excited about the economic opportunity, and we've seen support across, labor and environment and the business community because they know how important infrastructure is and making sure that it's ready for storms or making sure that we're providing that clean drinking water and that sewage work that we all need for our communities.
We like to say this isn't an expenditure of funds, but rather it's an investment of funds.
Right.
And it's an
That's
investment.
a pretty good way of putting it.
Yeah, and it's an investment that's going to pay off in many ways for our economy, but also for our health and also for our island's sustainability.
Right.
Something we really do need to worry about.
Right.
Another thing I think is really important for our listeners and our viewers to hear is that one of the challenges we have on Long Island is that we need to filter a lot of our drinking water.
Right.
There's all these chemicals, whether it's 1,4-dioxane, PFOA, PFAS, and a myriad of other volatile organic chemicals. We know how to filter it, but it's expensive.
Sure.
And we don't want that cost to be passed along to the public.
ratepayers, right.
Because water is a necessity.
Right.
And it needs to be affordable. So part of this program in the Bond Act is to provide grants to not only the Suffolk County Water Authority, but the other water
Districts, small
right,
districts,
throughout Long Island, to be able to buy this state-of-the-art filtration equipment so that that is a grant and it
Right.
doesn't get added to the cost of water.
Right.
Because, our organization champions clean water, but it's not free.
Right.
But we don't want people to have to pay big water bills. That is something we've worked really hard to get the state engaged in giving grants to prevent that. So I'm happy that
And a
there's
lot of thought went into that.
Yes.
Because again, it's about the balancing act that we all know. Families are wanting to make sure that they can stay here,
Right.
and they got to be able to stay here if they're not worried about being flooded out, or if they're not worried about what impact drinking water, not having access to clean drinking water is, and also we want to create some careers.
Right. Not only that, but we know that making these investments now will be cheaper than having to deal with the consequences later.
Right.
Right. It is better for us financially as well as from a health perspective if we're dealing with these things on the front end. As they say, right, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're making the investments smartly in a way that are going to help protect our communities and our neighbors and our friends.
Now, I know that you both spent a lot of time at the legislature making sure that
Yes,
this
we
got
did.
done. And I know that you have been out on the surrounding areas, getting people out. If somebody was interested in getting involved in helping advocate, since we've got several weeks leading up to Election Day, who would they contact?
Well, one thing I will mention is that we are hiring people to do outreach.
I knew that you would be.
You knew that we would be. You are a very wise supervisor.
You have wonderful people who do your door-to-door.
Well, we're running special Saturdays where people will just be distributing information on the Environmental Bond Act, reminding people it's Proposition 1 on the ballot.
Yeah, and make
Flip your
sure,
ballot over.
show them, do a little
Show them. I have to do a
demonstration.
demonstration. Here you are, you're voting for governor, you're voting for Congress, you're voting for state. Then you're going to flip it over. The first proposition on the ballot, it might be the only in some cases,
Yes,
you have to vote on that.
right.
So it'll say clean water, clean air, green jobs, Environmental Bond
Bond
Act.
Act.
So that's where you have to go to do it, and we don't want people to forget.
Right, and that's important.
Right, and
But let me
we want to make sure people are making a pledge to vote. Also, that's
Right.
one of the things that we're asking people. We have a coalition website. We're cleverly entitled "Vote Yes for Clean Water and Jobs." We're very
Vote
subtle.
yes
That's right.
for clean water and
And
jobs.
jobs.
Nice.
Yep. Vote yes for clean water and jobs .org. If you want to go and find out some more information, take a pledge to vote for the Bond Act, because we want to make sure people don't forget. We can send you a reminder. We can help you to tell your friends about it.
And the good news is now we've got early voting.
Yep.
So you literally
Right.
have 10 days leading up to the general election day, which everybody is used to doing
Yep.
November 8th. but you've got 10 days, so literally you can, make a plan to just
Exactly.
stop by. And Suffolk Board of Elections has expanded the number of early voting sites that are available in Suffolk County, so it's not just one per town, but literally we'll have 3 in Babylon, and as the towns get larger, they get more sites. So people should be able to figure out a time to get there. And I know it's not a non-presidential year, which sometimes tends to have people not wanting to vote. But probably if you want to think of something more important, I don't think you can, than clean
We couldn't
water
really
right.
do more.
and clean air.
right.
And so voting for president is important, but voting for your kids' future, and your family's future
Right.
really sends a message that you need to go out there and do that.
This
right.
is an opportunity for voters to say to the state, yes, we support clean water and clean air. And it's very easy, right? That's all you have to do is go out and vote. And as you said, we have the 10 days of early voting. I vote early all the time. Let me tell you, there's no lines.
No lines.
Right? There's no excuses. So now you have 11 different days that you can vote on.
Right.
It's very easy. So we want to make sure everybody's getting out to vote and telling all their friends and family to do the same.
I'm a traditionalist. I still go on election
day.
day and I vote. I don't know. There's something exciting about that. Maybe I'm just a geek. But one of the things I wanted to mention too about what's important with regards to clean water and the Bond Act, and that is our challenge here in the town of Babylon against brown tide.
Right.
And brown tide has been reoccurring every year. As we all know, this August was the hottest August on record. Unfortunately, brown tide has once again been prevalent. And although it's not toxic to people, and it's supposedly not toxic to fish, or I should say technically it's not toxic to fish, but it does kill shellfish, and it also does harm finfish because they can't see their prey, and therefore many times it depletes the oxygen in the water, it causes fish kills. So we know that this has to be addressed, and this will have funding for those kinds of programs for brown tide.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because we have a team here in Babylon that does clam seeding.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And we've also got work being done with trying to bring back our oyster industry. So we've got a barge that leaves out of Lindenhurst that's doing also oyster seeding in oyster farm beds out in the bay. And that literally just kills us with all the work that we do early in the year. And the brown tide coming in.
It's like a tragic story.
It's a
every
tragic
year we spend
story.
millions of dollars on reseeding for hard-shell clams and the scallops, and they die because of the brown tide. Sometimes mahogany tide, sometimes red tide.
Right.
This
The
is
rainbow of tides.
Yeah,
The
this is
rainbow.
a rainbow
Yeah.
of
Like
tides,
your scarf.
toxic tides that we don't want. But I will say the good news is that we now, science has really come a long way on how to restore the shellfish populations. And what do we need to do that? And they're doing a lot of great work on it. We need some funding, which we can find in the Bond Act.
Absolutely.
To do it successfully. And I don't think this is pie in the sky. I think once we address our nitrogen and also restoration of shellfish, we can bring our bays back. And that's the goal.
Which will also make us better prepared for storms.
Yes.
Like, that's
No,
what people
because
don't
everything
always
we're
realize
doing on that equation is going to benefit us. Look, I was there the night Sandy rolled in, and our 6'5" fire chief from Lindenhurst, Jimmy Gallagher, had pulled all of the men and women out from there because of the way the water came up. He was frightened. And when I saw him having a frightened look on his face, something I never want to experience again, and I know the residents who live down there never want, and they want us. It would be malpractice on our part not to be able to get that done.
That's right. I mean, look, we have work to do. I think we've come a long way in the last 10 years. I think that's good news. People like yourself, other leaders who are stepping up to the plate saying, we need these kind of programs. We need to reintroduce our shellfish, but we need to strengthen our wetlands.
Sure.
We need to treat our sewage. We need to clean up our bays. That's been great. I've really seen a sea change, no pun intended. But we need the funding.
Right.
And that's what the Clean Water, Clean Air Bond Act is really all about.
And the good news is that this is there, and this will lock in the state in making sure that the money is spent. Once this is approved, the money will be spent on the programs that are listed in the Bond Act.
That's right. That's right, which is really important. And it's an opportunity for the state and local governments and not-for-profits to be making those investments in those programs to make sure that our infrastructure is ready, that we're, having clean water and, dealing with our sewage issues, dealing with nitrogen here on Long Island. We know how important that is. It's public enemy number one, right? According to Steve Ballone, which I think is fantastic. And really, it's a good opportunity for us to be taking back and taking control and saying, this is what we want to do with our money. We want to be making sure that we're investing in infrastructure and helping to support the jobs associated with that so that we have better, stronger communities.
And let me say, if we don't approve this,
Don't say
well,
that,
I'm just,
Supervisor.
but I'm going to say, if we don't approve it, we're missing a great opportunity to leverage the federal dollars.
right.
Those dollars will be there, and yet they won't be able to affect the change that we need to affect. So if we don't do it, we're really cutting our nose off to spite our face. And that, I can't send that message more clearly to the residents of Babylon who have put their faith and trust in me over the past several elections, that I would say to you, this is a no-brainer, because it's important to have this money available to leverage the federal dollars and to put into place these programs that will benefit your kids and your kids' kids, your grandchildren, for many decades to come.
I agree. One other issue before we wrap up that we didn't touch on, and that is land preservation.
Yes.
The Bond Act has $650 million for preserving land. Now, a lot of people are going to say, what land? But we actually have in Suffolk County 30,000 acres of yet undeveloped land that we actually could preserve. We also, as we all know, have numerous farms that we know and love that we would love to see that preserved.
This is not just an upstate thing in terms
right.
of land. When people think of expansive land, they think upstate. You're right, farming industry out here to preserve that, and also the acreage that that you work so hard on, that Julie works so hard on, in terms of creating the Pine Barrens area in eastern Suffolk County. That there are still more properties to be purchased.
And we know how to save land,
Absolutely.
but we need the money. I'm going to keep saying
And then the stewardship of the land to make
Yes.
sure that we maintain it properly, not allow it to become a haven for dumpers, and that's all the important things that local governments can't do on their own, but would be able to enjoy the support from this bond.
And our parks. I mean, we have all rediscovered, I think, many people, our parks during COVID. And we were actually, I went to some parks where they had to be closed because there were too many people in them.
We had that problem in Babylon too.
Never happened before in the history of Long Island.
Right.
But with that increase, and it's slowed down a little now, but people are going to parks more frequently now than they were pre-COVID, and that means
we call it our staycations. So
staycations.
a lot of people have been impacted and haven't been able to go away, and they've learned
And
how
with the cost of gasoline, we only want to drive to the local
local park, and how enjoyable it is to be right in your own backyard,
Right.
to take advantage of the beautiful scenery and surroundings that we've got here.
Or
So-
if you want to do expanded bike paths, for example, that would be exactly the kind of thing that you could do with funding from the Bond Act.
Right.
Right. So the funding could be used to maintain existing parks, to expand them, to maybe improve them in various ways.
I've got a list for that too.
Okay. As soon as
I've got many lists for that. That's for sure.
I have a feeling you really are going to be first in line.
And it's based on all the input that we get from all of our residents that we had either during the Sandy discussions, post-Sandy discussions, and we've got stuff that's on the drawing board that if they said, yes, we've got Bond Act money, we're ready to go in terms of putting out the requests that we've submitted to Congressman Garbarino, Senators Schumer and Gillibrand, who I'm assuming are all very supportive of the Bond Act as well.
Yeah, well, it's a state bond act. So,
Right.
Okay.
But supporting, though, they'll be
Yes.
supporting. I'm sure if I spoke to any one of them, they would be
Let's
supportive
call them up right now.
of this. I'll put the good word in.
No, I'm sure also. I mean, really, we're very fortunate, I think, to have both Democrat and Republican elected officials who get the issue of the environment. And you know what? Let's be honest. People live on Long Island because we get to live by the water.
Right.
We don't live here because of the, traffic.
Yes.
We don't live here because of the cost of housing, but we do live here because we can be by the water.
Right.
And I think we love that, but we can't love it to death.
Right.
We have to now take an action to protect it, restore it, and maintain it, and pass it on to the next generation better
Better than we found it.
than it is today.
Right.
Because it's not so good
Not good,
today.
right.
And we need to do better.
Julie, what's the website again, one more time?
It's vote yes for cleanwaterandjobs.org.
Right, and that's good for people to go to. They can get
They can get
further
information, correct, about the
and
Bond Act.
even figure out a way to help if somebody's watching this and they want to get up off the couch, get out there and do their part to make sure that people come out and vote. Educate your family and your neighbors
That's
about
right.
the
That's
importance
right.
of the Bond Act. And again, one more time, it's when you're voting for governor and Congress and state offices, you're going to turn it over. In fact, don't even vote for them first. Turn it over first, vote for the Bond Act, and then go back to making
Oh, I like that. I'm
all
gonna
of your
start saying
decisions. In
that.
fact, we're
Yes.
going to tell them that. When you get in there, you go and
Vote
vote
for
on the
Prop
Bond
one.
Prop one
Prop one.
first,
so that you don't forget.
and then flip it. I
And
like
flip
that.
it. Is that good?
That's going to be our new motto.
That's a new slogan for the website.
There we
Yep.
go.
And the
There
only
we
thing I
go.
want to add before we wrap up today is that if anybody does want to work on Saturdays to do outreach on the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Bond Act, please call my office, 516-390-7150. We're doing just Saturdays between now and Election Day, and we're paying $18 an hour, and we're just distributing information at fairs or in particular communities about the fact the Bond Act's on the ballot. The challenge we have is that it's been a quiet Bond Act.
Correct.
So that's why we're here with the supervisor today, and people don't really know about it. So we're working really hard to get the word out. If you'd like to help and get paid while you're helping, please give us a call.
Well, I think now that we're past the primaries, which there were so many of this year,
Yes, right.
I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about the Bond Act.
Yes,
Right.
So
and
it's
Adrienne's a
exciting.
good boss, by the way. So
best.
you'll enjoy working for her. And I know Julie's really good at what she does too. So I want to thank you both for your leadership in making sure that I know this was probably very tough to get going through the state legislative process with all the issues going on. But I know at the end of the day, they all came together and made sure that this was out there. And again, one more time, vote yes on Proposition 1, the Clean Air, Clean Water, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act for New York State's future, your family's future. Start on the back, vote yes, and then turn over and vote for all the other offices.
Fantastic.
Thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
us,
much.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor.